Nebraska firing Scott Frost in his 5th season as head coach of the Huskers. He finishes with a record of 16-31, no winning seasons, no bowl appearances, a 5-22 record in close games, and having won no more than 3 Big Ten games in a single season. Guys, all that I just said, on top of a loss to Georgia Southern at home on Saturday, explains why he was fired. But Carl, explain to me, where did it ultimately go wrong with Frost?
It was never a good fit from the beginning. There is always going to be admiration for alums and people wanting to bring alums back that are successful coaches to coach their programs. But how Scott Frost plays and the kind of systems that he wants to run do not fit at the University of Nebraska. He had a ton of success at Central Florida. He had a ton of success as an OC at Oregon, recruiting great athletes from warm weather cities where they throw the ball and spin the ball around a lot. But that is not Nebraska Cornhusker football. Scott Frost was a triple option quarterback for Nebraska. That is what brought them success. Power running, elite defense. It was never a good fit. It was not a natural recruiting fit either. It just didn't work out at Nebraska, and those are the reasons why.
Blake, do you believe it was never a good fit?
Yeah, whenever you bring back alumni, the fan bases always love that, but it doesn't always work out. I think, hitching his wagon to Adrian Martinez really cost him over the long haul because he didn't turn out to be the quarterback that I think that Nebraska wanted him to be. A very good runner of the football, but you got to be able to throw it a little bit if you're going to run Scott Frost's offense. So I think that they could have done better at quarterback. Ultimately losing, over 10 games with a one-score, ability to just not close on those tight games is a really odd stat for them. But they just couldn't do it. And the defense ultimately was really bad and got even worse this year. So I think some of his coaching hires he brought in when he first came to Nebraska, he brought in his entire staff from UCF, and being loyal is admirable, but it just didn't work out for Scott Frost, and he made out like with a lot of money at the end of the day, but with his tail between his legs, getting fired within a couple of games of this year.
Carl, you mentioned that Nebraska got away from Nebraska football. A lot of the players playing right now on this team were not alive to see the Cornhuskers in their heyday back in the 90s. How do they get back to that? Is it more than just a new head coach?
It's an administrative demonstration to understanding who you are and what you want to be. Everybody at Nebraska, I hear them all the time. They keep saying they want the Tom Osborne era. They want to be dominant the way they were. Nick Saban patterned his program and his approach off of Nebraska and Tom Osborne's program when they went and beat up on him at Michigan State. Physicality, great defense. But everybody wants that success, but it doesn't seem like anybody there wants to go back to the way that program was built. Nebraska has never been big time in recruiting during their heyday. They developed guys. They had a tremendous walk-on program. They had great linemen from in-state in the Midwest. A lot of those guys came through the walk-on program. They found option quarterbacks, Tommy Frazier, guys like him. They weren't highly rated recruits, Tommy Frazier and Eric Crouch. So the way that they played to win those championships at Nebraska, everybody wants that era, but for some reason, they don't want to go back and play that style of football and or build the program the same way around the tenets that it was built around back when Tom Osborne was running the football and dominating college football. Kids today don't understand that the way that you view Alabama today, the way that you view Georgia, that was the University of Nebraska. It was nothing like watching the Cornhuskers play.
Blake, does that style work in 2022?
I think it works. Yeah, I mean, it definitely works. You've got to find the right people. Nebraska is a school that's always built their football team in the trenches. They've always had at least not lately, but in the past, they had great offensive and defensive line. They got to get back to those ways. They've got to find a coach that can change the culture at Nebraska, which is first and foremost. And then secondly, Nebraska is going to have to really rely on the NIL and transfer portal era to rebuild their program. This is not going to be an easy fix. They're going to have to go out and get players that they normally couldn't get. They're going to have to overspend in the NIL market if they want to get back to relevant anytime soon, because it's not going to be, it's a changing landscape, and it's going to be harder for teams to get elite players when your program is not as good up and down the line of scrimmage. So they're going to have to go out, find an elite quarterback first, and then get their trench play figured out, because until you do that, it's all lost cause, because the trenches are where Nebraska has a chance to win games.
And I agree with Blake on this. They do need elite quarterback play. They need to participate in NIL, but they also need to understand what they are. I would argue with everybody for what Nebraska did. Tommy Frazier, Eric Crouch, and Scott Frost were elite quarterbacks for what the Cornhuskers were doing back then. And so I just think that right now they're lost. They ran Frank Solich out of town, who was the last connection to the Osborne era. Bill Callahan, Mike Riley, now Scott Frost, Bo Pelini. Nobody liked Bo Pelini when Bo Pelini was there winning 9 games a year. They have been floundering in the wind ever since they've gotten away from the way Tom Osborne won football games.
Speaking of former Cornhusker quarterbacks, Nebraska now turns to Mickey Joseph as the interim head coach. Amy Just of the Lincoln Journal-Star brought this to our attention. Joseph is now the first black head coach in Nebraska history. Not just football, every sport. Carl, does he or should he get a fair shot at the permanent job?
If he wins, I mean, he has to win. It's no different than any other interim coach that takes over the job. You are the first guy that has an opportunity to win and prove that you're the guy for the job. So we saw Dabo Swinney started off as an interim coach. He won a national championship. Ed Orgeron started off at LSU as the interim coach. He won a national championship, didn't end as well. So I think when you have that opportunity, you have the opportunity to show that you belong. Another thing that I think this helps Mickey Joseph with is, even if he doesn't keep the Nebraska job, it gives him an opportunity to audition for the other head coaching jobs that are going to come open. Mickey Joseph has been an elite recruiter. He's been an elite position coach. He's going to get an opportunity to lead Nebraska Cornhuskers. And so this is the best interview in the country that you could have for the position.
Yeah, I agree with Carl. He's got to win. I mean, that's the only chance he's got to keep this job at Nebraska. Is going to have to win and win big. It's going to be really tough, starting off 1 and 2 the way they are right now. But anything's possible. One of the reasons that you fire a coach this early is so you can have the ability to be the first team to really go out on the market and try to hire the guy that you want. So I think that's obviously what Trev Alberts is thinking. I'm surprised that his seat's not a little bit hotter, because he had a chance to fix this situation in the offseason. He gave his former teammate an opportunity to come back when most people thought it was not going to work out. And so now it hasn't, and they've had to eat a lot of money because of it. So Mickey Joseph's in a tough situation. But I mean, if you look at it from his seat, like Carl said, this is a great audition for him. And if he turns it around quickly and the players rally behind him, then you could have a situation kind of like Clay Helton had at USC, where he's able to keep the job.
Well, now that Nebraska is embarking on a coaching search, let's start with you, Blake. Give me a realistic possibility for who they should hire.
Well, I think you have to look at Iowa State's Matt Campbell. I think that's a guy that is an elite culture changer. He's taken over a couple of programs now, changed the identity of and the trajectory of both programs that he's had. Is a very well thought of coach. that I think last year maybe looked around a little bit more than he had been. And I think Nebraska would be an opportunity for him to go into an even bigger program and a bigger stage and turn around a program that's been kind of floating out in the college football stratosphere, not really having a great place to land. So that would be the first guy that I would look at, and I think it would be a great fit at Nebraska, because the culture is the first thing that I think you have to look at to change, and he's a proven guy that's done it.
Carl, give me a name.
If I was Nebraska, I would go and get Jeff Monken, the coach at Army. Jeff Monken has turned Army into a very respectable program, bowl games every year. Navy is not even a factor anymore in that rivalry, as Army has been rolling over them. He's a guy that comes from a triple option background, which is the way that they played during the Tom Osborne era. And in my opinion, that's one of the best ways that Nebraska can play. They can recruit to that. They can recruit the kind of guys you need. They are going to have more success finding a quarterback that can run the triple option at a high level than they are going to be able to compete with the Blue Bloods, getting a five-star quarterback who can throw the ball all over the field. Jeff Monken is a high-level coach. He's going to bring a certain type of toughness and blue-collar character to an environment like that. He's a Midwestern guy with Midwestern ties. They have to improve their toughness and their culture and be dominant on both sides of the line. That would be the guy that I would call initially if I was the University of Nebraska.
I like it. All right, Blake, let's get a little wild. Who's, potentially an out there guy that we should maybe keep our eye on, but could be shooting for the stars a little bit for Nebraska?
Well, a guy that I would want to talk to for sure is Gary Patterson. Gary Patterson is one of the all-time great defensive coaches, has done it at a school at TCU that has developed guys that were not highly recruited guys on both sides of the ball, and really done an excellent job at turning TCU's football program around. He don't know if he wants to recruit at this level, especially with the NIL era, but he is an elite mind. He'd be a great fit. He's got some Midwestern ties, and Nebraska has failed hiring offensive coaches the last few times, so maybe they go the defensive route, and who better than Gary Patterson?
All right, Carl, dare to dream. Who you got?
If you're gonna go with a defensive guy, Blake, you have to take a long look at Pittsburgh coach Pat Narduzzi. Pat Narduzzi has been a dominant defensive coach. He dominated at Michigan State in the Big Ten with the Spartan Dog defense. They were beating up on guys, and they were doing it with guys that were three-star recruits that they were developing and getting better. They weren't able to recruit the same kid that Ohio State and Michigan were recruiting, but they found a way to be dominant and win the Big Ten. And he's a guy that has already been in the Big Ten, can recruit the Midwest, has recruited that area for years, a very defensive-minded guy who could bring back the mentality of the black shirt defense. We've talked about the struggles on offense, but we also have to remember that Nebraska had the black shirt defense, which was an honor for guys to be on that field in that situation. Narduzzi can bring that back. He'll bring in an offensive coordinator that will run the ball and throw play action passing. He has the mentality that you need to be successful and the recruiting chops to win big at the University of Nebraska.
Really thought we'd see an Urban Meyer out there, but I see that a lot on Twitter right now. Talking about dare to dream, that is definitely a dream.